coming out and just coming in here to this breakout on just how keys to retention. Introduce myself, I am Ryan Gossam. I am a local ministry rep with the Ministry of Family Life, where we exist to bring help and hope to every home. We've got a booth down right at the stage. Just want to let everybody know we are giving away a Weekend to Remember gift card at this event. That's a $350 value to a weekend marriage getaway that will be in Louisville in November. But with that, I get the pleasure of introducing Lucas Frazier. Lucas is the founder and president of Louisville Keep Your Fork, an environmental advocacy group for Floyds Fork. There's more of his bio in the book, but just what I wanted to say about Lucas. Lucas is a great man of faith and a great leader. We've had several long conversations at our local church together, and he has an amazing story of his leap of faith after 20 years at UPS to where he's at today. So if you get some other time, catch him up on that story. But he has a beautiful family. He's got a wife, 4 kids. I got the pleasure of hanging out with one of his sons last night. So please welcome Lucas Frazier.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ryan. Welcome. So as Ryan said, my name is Lucas Frazier. Thank you all for coming and being part of this breakout session. I want you to envision in your mind being part of an organization where you have constant problems and challenges exist, and then you come up with a solution to a problem that saves your company millions of dollars and dozens of injuries every year, year after year after year. Millions of dollars and dozens of injuries. And during that time, no one ever says thank you. No one ever even acknowledges that you did it, and they just completely look at you as if, well, that's what you get paid to do. That's your job. That's a painful environment for an employee to work, where it's, well, what have you done for me lately? Unfortunately, I've seen that many times in different locations, different places, and it's a constant thing where a person that gives that kind of effort or thought into the company, into the organization, into the ministry, and is not acknowledged for their achievement, recognized for what they've done, they're going to have a much harder time bringing their A game every day. You may retain them on the books, but if you retained them in their effort and their desire to be part of what you're doing. Over the course of this talk, I want to cover with you what's changed with the modern worker and then our response to it. There's been a shift that's happened with the workforce. And we want to make sure that we are, as an organization, as ministries, as businesses, staying abreast of what's happening. We're going to talk about developing teams, developing trust, and developing leaders. Now, for decades, people cared about good pay and stability of job. And then somewhere in the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, there was a revolution of management employees that took place. You had employment engagement practices. Things like team working started popping up. And you had a separation that took place of the effects of polarization in the workforce. You had almost like superstars culture, where you're going to throw tons of money at certain people to retain them. And that was a very common thing. You're just going to keep throwing money and benefits at them. But on the other side, you had this flexible workforce where you want to retain people, so you're going to have this culture of almost like a seasonal workers. That I don't need you all the time, I need you sometimes. And so you had this just-in-time practice that came into the workforce as well, that I don't need you every day, I just need you on certain days. And that's a constant thing, and that is part of the culture that has taken place. And out of that same process, you had these employment relations, employment engagement surveys, different things. Somewhere, people started to realize, I don't really trust my leadership team. And so they started asking questions. Do you feel seen by your company? Do you trust your management team? All of that took place, and that there was surveys that took, constantly trying to see how we're doing as a company, because they knew there was a gap between these two things, between the management team and the workforce. But since then, there's been another revolution that's taken place, where people come to work looking for identity. They come to work looking for purpose and meaning. This is a massive shift from I just want good pay to all of a sudden now I need identity. And if we're not providing this for people, then we're missing something very, very critical. The single strongest motivator for people is achievement. And the second is recognition. If you just look at kids who play sports, my children play sports, and they don't get paid, but they love to compete, they love to achieve things, and they want to be recognized for achievements. It's very basic. Adults are no different. We want to achieve things, and we want to be recognized for it. The difference is we have bills to pay, so we need some income to go with that. But there's not a loss in the fact that we want to achieve something. We want to be part of something that's making a difference in people's lives. Now, for the worker, how does that play out? What I tell people is your job satisfaction is primarily your immediate management team. If you like your boss, you're going to like your job, no matter what they pay you. But if you don't like your boss, you're not going to like your job, no matter what they pay you. It's critical that we understand that. Now, to do that, how do we respond to that? Is we have to know the difference between leadership and management. Leaders lead people, managers manage processes. The current workforce doesn't want to be managed. They want to be led by good leaders. We have to understand that they want to be invested in. I want to have identity, someone to see me. So I want to move into the how and the why. Why do we do this? Well, we focus on retention primarily because it's incredibly expensive. The cost of onboarding someone, getting them up to speed, getting them into the system, working through, getting them to learn the culture, what we're about, having them learn the problems that exist, and then finally getting solutions that come out of that is incredibly expensive. If you have a lot of churn, you're going to be throwing money away. But you want to retain people, but not just keep them on the books, keep them engaged. So the other reason that we really want to focus on retention is because we want to invest in people. And throughout this talk, I'm going to show how Jesus is the model for this. Investing in teams, investing in the future. Your organization is going to have problems. They're coming. Problems that you don't even know exist are on their way. And we want to have people that are spooled up and ready, that understand what your company, your organization is about, and then being prepared to move into the solutions. We work better as a unit together through these problems. So that's what we're going to do with the modern worker. Now, I have this graphic to show that, to me, this was incredibly sobering. This is an example of being task-oriented versus people-oriented. This talk is about how to move from being task-oriented to being people-oriented. My family, we're gardeners. We love to garden. And so my son, while I was putting this presentation together, he goes out and gets the seeds from where we have them. He goes out and draws up the garden, figures out where things are going to go. Carrots here, lettuce here. We're going to put the radishes there, the flowers there. He's so proud. He comes in to me and he says, "Dad, I want to show you what I did. I want to show you what I've done. I'm focused on this presentation for you. And I can't focus on, this is one of the most important relationships on the planet for me, and I'm being task-oriented. No, son, I don't have time for you. I'm putting this presentation together." And it's so hard to stop doing the task and to focus on the person. But we have to have that break. Yes, I did look at him. Yes, I did say, yep, that's good, and get him to go away so I go back to the task. I have had that done to me so many times at work. And it's painful because I know I didn't have their attention. They didn't really see what I did. And this was hard to realize. My wife's sitting right next to me, and I was like, did I just do that? This is so challenging. But this is where we have got to be people that understand that there's more than just business going on here. There's people that are their lives that are being impacted by what we do. So this is the how. How do we make this transition to being people-oriented versus task-oriented? We want to develop teams. Not stars, not superstars, actual teams. Think of a basketball team. You've got 15 players. They're not all centers. They're not all point guards. You might have a couple of each. A good coach is developing the centers to be better centers, point guards to be better point guards. They know the assignment. This team is going to have this kind of a person. We want to play that player at that point in the game. The older players are going to mentor the younger players. they're building a culture around that team. We want a team, not just stars. Jesus is the model for this. What's amazing is that when Jesus, I'll call it hires, he calls his disciples. He's building a ministry. He goes out and he hires people. He says, come follow me. Come join my team. He doesn't even look at resumes. He doesn't need a tax collector on his team. He's not looking for the best fisherman. He's looking for something specific. What is it that he knows? He doesn't even pick the most educated people. Later on, they're called unschooled people. They're the average people. He knows something when he's picking people. And not all his hires, theoretically, were that great. One of them betrayed him. Even Jesus. Now, obviously, Judas was needed for the overall picture. But the reality is, he invested tons into this person. The person still turned on him. He is still investing in people. What does he know? He knows what Jeremiah 29:11 says. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope in a future. Now, if I'm running a business and I've got a person here, Simon Peter comes up, God, the creator of the universe, has a plan for this person's life, and it's to prosper. I want that guy on my team. I want the guy or the lady who there's a plan from God to prosper that person. I want him on my team. That's what even Pharaoh knew. Pharaoh has Joseph shows up. He's the guy, put him in charge. Xerxes, he's the guy on Daniel. Darius, Daniel, like these people, they knew, hey, this guy is blessed. Everything they touch, bring him on the team. They may not be that Pharaoh in Joseph's story, he just met him moments ago, but he knew right away. This is what Jesus was doing. He's building a team. Stephen Covey, he wrote Speed of Trust, said, asking a company CEO, what if we train everyone and they all leave? And the response that he gave, the CEO, was, what if I don't train them and they all stay? That's a sobering thought. We want to invest in people. We know that we're going to build up their abilities and they become more marketable. I have a dear friend. His wife is incredibly gifted in lots of jobs. She got a new job, and as soon as she got it, she was missing one technical skill, and immediately the employer said, hey, we want to get you that skill. We want to develop that. And she becomes more marketable. They know she's going to need that for this job. It's a risk they're willing to take because they have a long picture. They're in it for the long haul. They want to build what we're going to move into, which is trust. Now, in teams, the founder of UPS, Jim Casey, said, good management is taking a sincere interest in the welfare of the people you work with. It's the ability to make individuals feel that you and they are the company, not merely employees of it. That's a major shift. When you start to move people from being just employees to being part of it. If I look at the church and I say, well, that's the church over there, then I miss what we're doing in this room. We are the bride of Christ. I put this together to advance the kingdom of God, to invest in you, to hopefully inspire you and motivate you to invest in other people. And this is how the church works. It doesn't just work on Sunday. It works every day. We want people to understand that they are the church. The church isn't over there. The same is true of your company or organization. That it's not just a building that's over there. We are that organization, that ministry, that mission. When I was at UPS, I had an employee that was a single mom, and she was struggling mightily. She had a hard time coming to work. She was missing work. And I came from a single mom family as well. And so I understood, and I was very sympathetic. But I knew that we needed to help her. And so I got a friend of mine, and we went over to her house. And I told the work group, this is what I'm going to do, so they didn't think there was favoritism. She has a problem with mold in the bathroom. They were sick. They were constantly dealing with issues. So we went and gutted the entire bathroom, got her a new toilet, put in smoke detectors in the house, took care of her so that she could come to work. That we wanted to love on her and invest in her. That spoke not just to that one person, but the entire work group all of a sudden realized that I was for real. I am trying to invest in people. I'm not just trying to hit the X's and O's and trying to hit my numbers. I want them to know that we are a team, that we're part of a family working together through this. Now, to build build a team, you have to have traditions. You have to have something that's unique about your family or your group or whatever it is. And so personally in my family, for example, at the end of dinner, every dinner, we read a chapter in a book. We read a chapter in the Bible, we read a chapter in something. We're reading as a family. When we read the Bible, we make it come alive. We don't just read it and check and move it aside. We work through it. We talk about it. We say, what was that like? What do you think it was like to be that person in that situation? What would you do in that situation? And if you came to our house tonight, we would do the same thing. We would read the Bible together. We would ask you the same questions. It's the tradition of our family that our kids know they are part of something and that they will carry that on. The modern worker is looking for identity. They want to be part of it. And so you can build that team, that culture within your work group, your ministry. One of the things that I brought to at UPS is there's a great movie called The Count of Monte Cristo. And in it, they had a king that they would give to another person whenever they have a victory. They say, kings to you. And I loved that. And so I took I collect chessboards. And so I took one of my kings and I brought it to work and I said, I want to start doing it. Every time someone has a victory at this workplace, I want to make sure we're throwing it to the next person. And we say, kings to you. And we celebrate victories. And we started doing that around the room. Once a month, someone would stand up and they would show their king and they would say, kings to you, and they would highlight that person's victory. I saw you do that this month. I saw this happen. And it created a different kind of environment for the culture, for that management team. It built an identity. The second thing you can do for retention is to build trust. Now, trust is one of those interesting words. It's kind of like love. You know, I love my wife, and I love football, and I love, going on walks, and just it's too generic, so many different things. Trust is that same kind of a word where I might trust you with my, taxes, but I'm not going to trust you around my kids. I can trust you with a secret, but I'm not going to trust, we trust different things, but we just say generically, they broke trust. Well, the trust model is actually multiple different things. And you can, if in the workplace, if you break it down this way, you say, okay, there's character and there's competence. And a person can if they break character, then you have other issues, integrity, and you're going to be dealing with discipline in that fashion of working through, they lied. But often, a break in trust really comes from competence and their capability and the results, that they didn't produce the numbers that they said they were going to produce. Why didn't they produce it? Often there's a break in trust because of lack of clear expectations. Now, what do we do about expectations? How do we build expectations to build trust? Because if we clarify expectations, we have a better chance of having stronger trust, because now you know and I know we're on the same page. And that's what this situational leadership model is. Maybe it's a little difficult on the left to read. The directing is on the red. And what we're doing is we're moving from micromanaging to delegating. And you do it through coaching and supporting. Now, most work groups that I've been part of do the two extremes. They'll do the micromanaging or they do the delegating. They don't do the coaching and supporting. So when I first started, I was put in a leadership role at UPS. I would micromanage because I wanted to hit my numbers. And so I didn't believe that they would do it the way that it needed to be done. And so I would make sure that I was watching every step of the way. And I would hit my numbers for a little while, but then eventually people wear out and they just can't keep it up. And the numbers would start to slide. And then my boss would come to me, why aren't you keeping up with these numbers? And it just broke down. And so one day I realized I'm going to scrap that model, because that's not biblical to be just on people like that all the time. Jesus constantly was saying, now go and sin no more. It's like the total freedom that he offered people. But you'll see, and we'll go through, that there was a lot of teaching that he was helping people through as well. And so I switched over to this coaching and supporting and then ultimately delegating. And what I saw happen is that when my employees made mistakes, and my management team I thought was going to come down on me like a ton of bricks, what ended up happening is I would be able to say, I'm working with that employee, this is what we're doing, and I would walk through the steps of how I'm coaching, how I'm supporting them. And my leadership team saw the vision and said, totally get it, just keep me informed of how it's coming. And they would give me more room, more leniency not to make mistakes, but to coach the person and get them ready for where we're moving to. The other extreme is delegating. And I've been the recipient of that many times, where I would walk into an office and my boss would just give me an assignment of which I knew nothing about. I need you to go figure this out. I wouldn't know where to get the information. I didn't know what the question even was. I would just be given something. And the vision is, this is what I pay you to do. And I was completely at a loss. I couldn't have felt more lost at that moment than unsupported. Ultimately, that's what drives people to disengage. That they are not going to give their best effort when they feel like they're just getting dumped on with no support, no coaching. Again, Jesus is the model of moving from micromanaging through coaching and supporting to delegating. In Matthew 10, 5 through 42, this is when he gives the 12 disciples out to the ministry. They're supposed to go out into the communities and present the gospel. And he tells them 37 verses of instructions. This is what I want you to do. I want you to go here and not there. I want you to bring this and don't bring this. I want you to do this and say this. They didn't just get dumped this. They didn't get hired and then told this. This is chapter 10. They had just seen him do all kinds of things. Now in this chapter 10, verse 6, it says, he sent them out to heal the sick, to raise the dead, to cleanse the leper, and to drive out the demons. Those are pretty heavy-duty things. And yet, they had just seen him do every single one of those things. We were talking last night about cleansing the leper. That would be a tall order to tell someone, hey, I want you to go cleanse the leper. They don't want to touch him, let alone cleanse them. Yet they had just seen him do this. That's where he was showing them, coaching them, supporting them, and then he sends them out. And then in Luke 10, it gives the report of when they came back. When they come back, they're like, even the demons listen to us. And it was almost a, well done, you guys did it. It's working. This is the way it's going to work. It's fantastic how he would constantly coach and support them through all this. He didn't just dump it in their lap, but he also didn't go with them. He sent them. And then they came back and they reported. And the journey wasn't over. Okay, now we go to the next step. But it built trust between Jesus and the followers and Jesus. It was a constant relationship building. Now I do want to say one thing about before I get to this one. I want to remind, I had a moment at UPS that was eye-opening where, I'm going to go back, where we had 15 employees on one side of the building and 15 employees on this side of the building, and a supervisor that worked over here and a supervisor that worked over here. And we had a huge snowstorm that hit the entire city of Louisville. And that night, you have to have all the employees move all the packages. Well, that night, this supervisor, all 15 of them did not come to work. And on that same night, all 15 of these came to work that night. And it was just so eye-opening, the reality of the leadership difference and the way that they invested. This supervisor treated his people horribly, and they wouldn't come to work for him. They were like, why? They needed any excuse to not come to work. And this supervisor, they weren't going to stay away. They were going to support and be there for that because they were they saw seen by that supervisor. And it became a model. And that's where you can raise up that supervisor, like, let's figure out what that person's doing and make sure we're still investing in them and then figure out what's going wrong here with that supervisor. But it was very eye-opening. You see that in the workforce. Now the last one is the leaders, developing leaders and building mentorship relationships. And Bob did a fantastic job on mentorship. Mentorship is another one of those words, kind of like love and trust. It's a word that we enjoy. We like it. It seems like it's a good thing, and yet, how many blacksmiths are out there mentoring, people? How does this work? How does this work in this environment, especially in the business environment? Do we sit down? Do we talk? And Bob gave some great examples of just getting in the car together and just bringing them to meetings and letting them see. And that story of Dave watching the boardroom meeting, that's where it's at, where you're rubbing elbows together. But building mentorship relationships are critical to letting people realize that they're part of something, that there's meaning and purpose. Again, Jesus is the model for mentorship. Now, in Matthew 16, 13 through 27, this is the passage when they go to Caesarea Philippi, and he asks, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter's like, "You're the Christ, the Son of the living God." And he's like, "On this, I'm going to build the church." And immediately after that, it says he began to teach them every day. And it says, "Then Jesus said to his disciples, 'Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it.'" This is a critical moment where he's laying it out. This is what, if you want to follow me, this is what it's going to take. And a mentor does that. A mentor is going to say, this is what you need to do. One of the most important responsibilities, this is a UPS policy. One of the most important responsibilities of our management team is the development of our people. We train our people in the overall job responsibilities by coaching and counseling. They are putting out there, the most important responsibility is the development of the people, not making sure packages are on time, not making sure service failure number is low, not making sure, the people. The people is where we want to be focused. Jesus says, if you were to sum up the whole law and the prophets, it's love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, all your mind. And the second one is just the same. Love people. Love them just like yourself. That's an important distinction. That Jesus is saying, if you want to loving me and loving people are the same. He constantly is saying, love people. What you've done for the least of these, you've done for me. Over and over and over again. When you look at the ministry in the Bible, he's got the most important job on the planet. Jesus is walking the earth, and he's constantly stopping what he's doing to talk to individuals. He has got to get the message out that this is the way to get to heaven. This is the way we eradicate sin. This is the way we do. This is what you have to do to be saved. And he stops everything. He's going to see Jairus and his dying daughter, and he gets touched at the hem of his cloak, and he's like, everybody stop. Who just touched me? And he's getting crowded everywhere. Stop everything. I want to talk to this one person. That's mind-blowing that he is constantly, I'm putting this presentation together, and my son walks in, and I don't stop what I'm doing to focus on him. Jesus, the creator of the universe, stops everything constantly. Blind Bartimaeus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Everybody stop. Let's talk to that one guy. Someone walks into your office, that person is the most important person. And that's a hard thing to do when you have all these, profit and loss and all these things that are happening, and these sheets are just screaming at you of deadlines. And when you look at what Jesus constantly was talking about, he never said, make sure your profit and loss is right. Make sure you're in the black here. Make sure that, he doesn't do that. He's constantly talking about the people, loving people. Even the children, he's like, the disciples are like, keep the children away. No, bring them here. What? Wait, they're a distraction. No, they're not. They're the future. We want to make sure we invest in them. This is what UPS believes. Now, they don't do it right all the time. No company does. But it's the mindset of we want to make people the most important responsibility. Now, mentorship relationships happen. They're not just one way. They're all over the place. I have two spiritual mentors, and I call them spiritual not because I separate the sacred and the secular, but because they remind me of my identity in Christ. They're constantly bringing me back to the things I'm sharing here, that what's really important, because I get off track. And they're like, no, remember, Christ lives in you and through you. Oh yeah, that's right. And we need each other to do that. But they happen everywhere. I had a job at UPS where there were 1,000 people in this building, and almost all of them were union. And of the 1,000 people, I was given an assignment of only 25 of them at this time, but one of them was the union steward of the entire building. And I just thought, God, why did you give me this person? He worked for me on paper, but he was never in my work area because he was always walking around. On the second day I had the job, my boss's boss came to me and said, I want you to get that guy working. No one had ever gotten him to work. And I'm supposed to get him working. Like, okay, I'm going to find out what he's doing with his day, and then put him on the line, get him working. And I'm thinking that's how we'll get him to work. I'll just, grind it. And that night, God came to me in a vision, in a dream. He said, I want you to employ, his name's Travis, I want you to employ Travis, but I want you to employ him in prayer. I don't even know this guy. I know him on a piece of paper. And I had his phone number because of him working for me. And so I call him up one night, and I said, hey, Travis, and it's hard to start a conversation with a dream. Like, I had a dream about you. And I say to him, I had a dream, and in the dream, God asked me to ask you to join me in prayer for the people in the building. Would you join me? And there was this long pause on the other side. And finally he said, he admitted he is a Christian. He would not join me in prayer at this time. And we were about to go into contract negotiations, and there was just this distrust, going back to what I said in the very beginning about employee engagement, that they didn't entrust management. And I was new. I'd been there 2 days. And said, okay, I understand. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pray for you every day you start your shift. He comes at 10 o'clock at night. I put a message in my computer. Every day at 10 o'clock pops up, pray for Travis. I prayed for him every day for 4 years. And over those 4 years, I got to know his wife, his kids. He would come and sit with me, and we would talk for 30 minutes to an hour. And there was all kinds of drama in his personal life it was in chaos. But he's never had anybody just invest in him. Well, what happened is he, as the union steward of the building, was able to come into work knowing someone had his back and was praying for him, and he was able to go into the work groups and bring peace and through the contract negotiations and then to all the union stewards that were under him. It was an amazing shift. And even the management team that worked for me that told me to get him working were blown away by the transition that took place. But it's because I stopped being task-oriented and started being people-oriented. And I just put it in my computer, every day, pray for Travis. And I did. And I would text him, pray for you this morning, pray for you. For us, it was night. And that was an incredible shift. And to this day, I could call him right now. And it's one of the most important relationships that I had at that building. And after I left that, he would still contact me. It's a critical investment in a person that had investment over almost 1,000 other people. We have to be intentional about what we're doing. Intentionality is critical. You can't just say, I'm going to have a mentor. You have to have where you're going to sit down and have focused questions. I would tell people when I was at UPS, I would train a lot. I did a lot of this mentoring and training people and setting people up to be mentors and mentees. And what I would say is, you come with specific questions, not just generic questions. You're not just shooting the breeze talking about the weather. What's going on at your work group? I'm struggling with this right now. I have this difficult employee. I have a situation, this person's not coming to work, or they come in, they're not doing their job. What would you do? I had a boss who he would sit down and just give someone the riot act about whatever it is that happened, and then almost like turn the page and then just start talking about family, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. When I get worked up about something, then I ended up, I'm totally wrapped up in that. I can't stop thinking about it. I said, how do you do that? And we would talk about it, what he would do and his steps he would take and how he'd been doing this for so long. And some of that was that history of just having been here before. But we would work through questions. I'm in this spot. I'm in this situation. And those intentional, focused questions helped me develop that relationship. Then, what I tell people is, you have those questions. If they say, go and do this, have this conversation, then you go and you do that, and you come back and report, kind of like the disciples did. This is what happened. Even the demons listened. There's that response, because the mentor wants to hear the feedback of, I'm glad that it's working. This is what I would have done. This is what I do differently. This is what I see the strength in you. You can do it this way. Focused questions and intentionality. This provides purpose and meaning. Again, the modern worker wants identity, purpose, and meaning. And when you have a mentorship relationship, when you're seeing that person, like my son walked in, he wanted me to see him. They want to be seen. Everybody does. It's something that's important for that human experience. We have to make sure that we don't get so big or so busy that we forget that Jesus walked the earth as the creator and focused on individual people. So all this takes focus, patience, and perseverance. It doesn't happen easy. It doesn't happen, just by chance. We have to actually be intentional about it. We have to be oriented in people, and not tasks. And here's the main thing, is that every person bears the image of God. That's what Jesus knew. He knew I could take someone who is just average, unschooled, and make them a world changer. How could you possibly do that? Because they bear the image of God, because they're unique, because they are critical to the kingdom of God. There's a plan on that person's life. Every person in this room, God has a plan, and it's to prosper you and not to harm you. He plans to give you hope in a future. Man, what can we do? If 12 guys who are unschooled can do that, what can we do? So why all this effort? Why would we do all of this? Because no one individual can do very well alone. Group ability will be far superior to that of any individual. There's problems coming, huge problems, and we're going to need everybody to be part of it. Now, I've got a quick thing I want to show you, and it's from Apollo 13, and it's just, to me, a fabulous example of this. If we get sound. Yeah.
Running the temperature, none of them is left.
I can't order these guys to go to sleep. Did you sleep up there? They get awful cold in there for those guys.
Gene, we have a situation brewing with the carbon dioxide.
We had a CO2 filter problem on the module.
5 filters on the limb.
We come in for 2 guys for a day and a half. So I told the doctor,
You're already up to 8 on the gauges. Anything over 15, and you get impaired judgment, blackouts, the beginnings of brain asphyxia.
What about the scrubbers on the command module?
they take square cartridges.
The ones on the limb are round.
Tell me this isn't a government operation.
This just isn't a contingency we remotely looked at.
Those CO2 levels are going to be getting toxic.
Well, I suggest you gentlemen invent a way to put a square peg in a round hole. Rapidly.
Okay, people, listen up. People upstairs handed us this one, and we gotta come through. We gotta find a way to make this fit into the hole for this, using nothing but that. Let's get it organized.
Okay, let's build a filter.
Maybe get some coffee going too. Come on.
Better get some coffee going. Sorry, sorry. That to me is a great example of teamwork where it was delegated, they trusted the people, there was a team trust, and finally they were working towards a solution that was going to save lives. And if you were on that team today, you'd still be proud of it. We did that. We achieved it. They were able to take this to make fit a whole of this with nothing but that. That's the kind of stuff that we're going to be thrown into. And God knows that. He knows what we're getting. The stories in the Bible are crazy, where King Nebuchadnezzar says that he wants someone to interpret his dream, to tell him what the dream is, interpret the dream, and if they don't, I'm going to kill you. What? What kind of boss is that? It's the worst boss ever. And Daniel's like, wait, time out. What? We're going to die? All right, give me a chance here. And he goes and he prays for a solution. And God gives him the dream and then gives him the solution to it. And then he moves forward. And God's plan was in motion, but he had this crazy situation of what would we do in that? I'd just be panicking. Everybody else panicked. My kids, we joke about that story a lot because he's got to be the worst boss in the history of bosses. But people want identity. They want purpose. They want meaning. And then we have to respond with teams, developing that identity through teams, having traditions, milestones, whatever it may be, building trust, that we trust each other. And ultimately, we're doing succession planning through leadership, developing mentors, and moving forward that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucas. That was just so key in just learning how to retain our workers. It's a new kind of revolution out there in the workforce, but one of the biggest things I took away was it's nothing new under the sun. Because it's God laid it out for us in the two greatest commandments of love God and love people. And it's just to be able to recognize people with achievement, recognition, the teams, doing all that together is really living out what Jesus modeled for us on earth while he was here. So, thank you, Lucas. We do have some time now for question and answers. Yeah, right here.
Workplace has changed. UPS, everybody's together. There's a new factory, everybody seeing each other every day. Not happening much these days. We're all usually at home. Other than people work in factories. What are the updates for this new world of work?
So one of the things that, and I didn't share, but I want to say is not everybody, to your point, not everybody even has employees. Some people are they have subcontractors, or they're on their own, just doing their thing from their house. And at UPS, we would say we have internal customers and external customers. That's because when I'm inside the factory or inside the building, I may not have direct access to an external customer. And they wanted me to think of it like a business, that all my internal customers are still people I'm serving. And so you're still serving people, you're still investing in people, even though you're not side by side, you have a customer. And I'd say with retention, there's a great story about Zappos, where Zappos had a person called customer service and said that they wanted to find out what the return policy was, because their mother had just passed away. And they were very sad, and they said, well, we have all these shoes that were not ever opened. So what happened was the customer service rep said, I'm so sorry, we'll send you a larger box, and we can send it all, you send it all back together. But it didn't stop there. They ended up sending flowers to that family the next day. That's the kind of stuff where they're investing in people that's different than the normal company that's just saying, yeah, send your stuff back to us. And they couldn't have done that. And so they're finding ways to invest that's outside of the normal purview. And when it comes to people at home, if you invest in that, finding ways to invest through the mediums that you have, finding people saying, we're going to sit down and talk a coffee or a Zoom or have a sidebar meeting, but learning about people, finding what's going on, like that single mom that was keeping them from coming to work, finding out what's going on in their personal life. When blind Bartimaeus yells out, Son of David, have mercy, from the text, Jesus doesn't know yet what's going on. He just says, come to me. And then he asks him, do you want to receive sight? Like, he's asking, what's wrong? What's going on? What's troubling you? And he wants to see. We can ask people how they're doing, what's going on in life, but where can I invest in you? And then praying, like I did with Travis, of praying. That was just a couple stories because of time, but there's so many times where God would put something on my heart to pray for a person. And so I'm in a meeting with someone. What word do you have for me? And I would pray into that word for that person. Finding ways of people you interact with, they bear the image of God. And we want to do that as best we can, wherever we can, because we don't know how many days we have left.
Thank you. Yes.
This was really good for me, just the affirmation, because I currently have an employee. I have a small business, so it's 4 employees. And so this person, just to see your diagram on the trust part, the character piece, character A+, trust her 1.
Yes.
Competency is not really, where I need it to be right now, the pace that we're at. And so I honestly, for the last couple of weeks, have been struggling with this because I didn't want to do the traditional model of you just got to let me go. I just felt like God was dealing with me like this person's. So you just affirmed that, which helped me because you have that battle between this is how you're supposed to work it, right? This is business.
Yes.
And the other side, like, wait a minute, this is a person. Like, she has a life. How do I transition her? How do I coach her? And I honestly believe she's more than an employee. Like, there's things in her where she is supposed to be moving more in her purpose. But how do I coach her to that? Because I can't believe in her more than she does.
Absolutely.
So trying to help that whole transition there without being this never connected.
Absolutely, yes. That horrible job, and you're done. Yeah, no, we are actually out of time, but what I would say is that trust model is huge, where you can pick out one of those things and say, I'm going to sit down and work with you on this, results or capabilities. And so they realize you've got integrity, you've got character, but we're going to be focusing on this, producing results or consistency or whatever it may be. And that helps them realize that you're not you're not gunning for them, you're investing in them. And I found that helped me when I'm doing discipline with, hey, not coming to work. They knew that I had spent all this time investing in them as a person. That was a critical piece to help with any kind of discipline talk that I had. So, thank you.
As we close, some of them ask, can you put the trust diagram back up so they can look at it or take a picture of it?
Yeah. For sure. Thank you all very much for coming.